back off when Israel decides to attack Iran.
You have psychopaths in charge, and that's all it is. These are crazy people. I mean, how successful do they have to be? Look at the great job, of success that they create to create more wars. How could people let them get away with this? I say that, of course, facetiously. It's been a disaster in Iraq. What did it cost? $1 trillion, 1 million people killed in Iraq, their country destroyed. Every day you pick the paper up, 8 killed, 20 killed, 30 killed, 100 killed. Then you look at what's going on. Oh, by the way, it was a good reason to have that war. That Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. They never existed, but who cares? And then, of course, there's the wonderful Afghan war, going on to be the longest war in American history. What's been accomplished there? Absolutely nothing, other than building up more hatred, killing a lot of people, and sacrificing the lives of our troops. Great. What are they showing now? 1 out of 2 American troops coming back either have a mental or a physical disability. So now they're going to start new ones. The United States has opened up. They have AFRICOM now in 35 African countries. The French have invaded Mali. They can't get over that trip, them French, They can't get over the old French Sudan. Yeah, they had it only about, from 1896 to 1960. Oh, it couldn't be because of the uranium right next door in Niger that the Chinese and the people from India are going in and making deals with the dirt-poor Niger government to get their extraction of uranium out. Oh, it couldn't be because France has 75% of its energy coming from nuclear power, and now the people that own those natural resources want them for themselves. Could you imagine that? That's a good reason to bomb a country. And they could see the United States is opening up now fields in Africa to put drones in for more surveillance. And then you read the news coming out from the so-called terrorists to say, hey, there's going to be payback down the line. And we're warning you, it's going to hit France, it's going to hit the U.S., and other NATO countries that are supporting the interventions and occupations. And then, as I mentioned, look what's going on in Libya. Oh, I forgot to mention that brilliant strategic move by the U.S. military and the psychopaths in chief. You saw that wonderful clip of Hillary Clinton laughing. We came, he saw he died when she found out that Gaddafi was killed. I mean, my God, what kind of behavior is that? That's a human being? Boy, she makes the witches of Macbeth look tame. And so look at the job they did over in Libya, and look how it's all spilling over North Africa. Israel has the supreme right to defend itself, and every politician's repeating the same line. The United States Senate and the House voted unanimously in support of Israel in their massive attack on the Palestinians. Let's get this straight. I'm tired of hearing about these little bottle rockets that are going in there from the Palestinian side. Are they destabilizing things? Yes. But what has Israel done in the last year? Read back, review the trends journals, look at the map that we put up last week. They keep stealing Palestinian land and keep killing anybody from Hamas that they want. And then when Hamas strikes back with the only thing that they have, these little rockets that are about 1.5 feet taller than me and skinnier, Israel attacks with F-16s, with missiles, with gunboats shooting in there. Oh, and let's not forget this. Besides stealing the land, Gaza has been under siege by the Israelis for years. The place is a slum. It's one of the most populated places on earth. And nothing could come in and nothing could get out. And every time they kill a Palestinian, you know who these Palestinians are? They all have last names.
They're Palestinian militants. They're all from the same family, the militant family. How about resistance fighters? What gives Israel this right other than the United States and the Congress and the Senate? And I'm sick and tired of saying U.S. supports Israel. I'm a member of U.S. I pay my taxes. I don't support this. I don't support murder, whether it's in my country or anybody else's. And this is murder in the first degree. Israel keeps stealing Palestinian land, and they're enslaving the people in Gaza. They're in violation of international law and UN resolutions. The only time when the United States or the rest of the crony allies out there scream about breaking UN resolutions and then pummeling the hell out of them like they did to Gaddafi is when it's in their best interest. But Israel could do no wrong. And as I said, save your letters, complaints, cancel your subscription to the Trends Journal if you're Jewish and don't like what I have to say. This is not an attack on the Jewish people, any more than my criticism of the United States is an attack on the American people. It's an attack on the leadership of psychopaths and sociopaths that are ruling both countries. So let's get this straight.
The world lining up like we saw before the first two world wars. Am I wrong in intellectually, historically, but also in my gut, feeling the serious tremors in the force?
I think there are only two major sources of threat. One is the British monarchy, and the other is the British monarchy's puppet, which is Obama. The situation is that, as the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States have shown, they understand that any war that breaks out now, such as in the Middle East or elsewhere, will be a thermonuclear war. There may be other minor things and conflicts which are going on, but anytime the force comes in and someone says we're going to start the attack, it's going to be a full global attack, and it's going to be thermonuclear. And the question is, will anybody survive eventually, not merely out of the war, because you forget the Soviet or Russian and Chinese capabilities, which are very significant, and against the United States and Britain and something from France, which is the other side. And these forces are going to go against each other on a thermonuclear basis from the get-go. And that means that our submarines, our major submarines, are going to launch in their time. It's going to be a full launch, probably 1 or 2 rounds. Maybe within an hour and a half, it's all over. And the world looks pretty dead. So we're at a point where the idea of simple war, or war breaking out, or incidents leading to war, is not going to happen. What's happened is Russia and China have made a very firm commitment not to start a war, but to defend against it. Most people in the United States want no part of this. The only person but really behind it is the president, Obama. And Obama's with the Queen, but most of the people in Britain are not for this nonsense either. So we're on the verge of the worst kind of warfare one could imagine, which would break out very suddenly, with very little warning on any part. Certain services, such as the U.S. services, would understand and know this is going on immediately.
Let me stop you there, sir, because what you're saying is obviously right on target, but people may not understand the last 2 chairmen of the Joint Chiefs, the last 3 heads of CENTCOM, as you know, people can look this up, journalists can look this up, have refused to attack Iran, saying it would bring in China and Russia. Now they've sent the fleets over to menace China, and they think that that's going to allow this attack. But now even Dempsey, who's been known as not as smart as his predecessors, has been convinced and came out, as you know, last week and said, hey, I mean, the exact quote, it was a headline, was, do not blame us when Israel strikes and don't think we're supporting it. So that type, I mean, to have chairman of the Joint Chiefs saying that shows that the military establishment who love wars. I mean, that's their. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, they love to be commanded off to war. Generally, are saying, "Do not do this." What? I mean, how significant is that? That signifies a mutiny within the saner sectors of the power structure.
I'm not sure the word mutiny is the right term. The point is, because nothing that the Joint Chiefs and others are doing to that effect is a violation of anything on their part.
Sure. I mean, that's the wrong term. It's a sanity call. What would you call it then?
The point is you've got to throw this president out of office. Even though he's just been nominated, I don't think it's going to stick. And he's not in a winning position right now.
But what does it mean inside the government, where you have so many connections, to have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs come out and say something countervailing what the president and certain sectors of Israel are pushing?
Yeah, but the Joint Chiefs are operating within their powers of government. And the president doesn't dare challenge that directly, because the president is not a popular president. I mean,
am I right to say that it's seismic, though? I mean, how big of a deal is it to have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs come out, say that, and it gets almost no press?
You're talking about, if you're a member of the Joint Chiefs, and you're a patriot as I am, you're not going to play games and guessing games or anything with this policy. We know that any major war that breaks out on this planet will be a thermonuclear war. There are no minor wars possible. You cannot have a continuation of the war with the Middle East at all. Any such war will lead to thermonuclear war immediately. And that means that within about an hour and a half, most of the world is dead. And anyone who is competent, like the Joint Chiefs or other people of the same interests, have Russians or Chinese, all the same thing. This war must not occur. And if somebody tries to start it, we should get them out of the way quick. Because if we let this war happen, we're in the age of thermonuclear warfare, and nobody can win thermonuclear warfare. The human race might go extinct within the aftermath of such an attack. So no sane person, and I wouldn't include this president as sane, no sane person wants to start such a war. There are other means we're going to have to use to deal with conflict. Many of the means are not conflict at all. They're just arguments about how we're going to settle things. But we've come to a time where we have to learn the truth. You cannot have war among major nations today. No sane head of government would launch it. But I think there are some people who are not so sane, including our current president.
Not satisfied with its missile shield in Europe, Washington has announced plans for a similar weapon system in Asia. A Pentagon official pointed at a perceived threat from North Korea as the main justification. But political activist and head of the New Patriotic Alliance, Renato Reyes, says that's a paper-thin excuse.
Clearly, the threat is being exaggerated by the United States. But we can see beyond the rhetoric that the real target here is China, and the U.S. wants to justify rebalancing most of its troops towards the Asian region. The so-called threats emanating from China are highly suspicious, questionable, and are in fact being twisted just so the U.S. can justify sending more troops and ships here in this region. Only intended to provide more justification for the permanent and expanded U.S. military presence in our region. That's another concern of ours. Will the U.S. missile shield provoke an arms race in the region? Will it provoke countries like China and North Korea into taking a tougher stance, into competing with the United States and deploying more war machines throughout Asia? And if that happens, that would be a bigger threat to peace.
Who spent most of last year cheering on Islamist rebels in Syria, has now taken the line that Islamist rebels in Mali are the biggest dangers to the world and we must intervene, that Britain must help France, regardless of the consequences to Britain. And I think it's a very misguided policy. Unfortunately, the political elite in Britain seem to be all behind his policy, which is very disturbing. But I think the public, speaking for the public, I think we're very concerned about what's going on.